Hey, happy Friday. What a Friday. What a week.
Hey guys.
Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a wild week, a wild Friday. So, just trying to wrap my head around what's been happening over the past 48 hours, actually, all week, basically. But we have a lot of people joining us today, and I appreciate all of you who came so far. And AP, thank you for coming onto the panel today. Hey, Allie, I'm getting you a mic. Um, but yes, thank you all for coming. And this is such a wild week. We need all the minds that we can get to go over what's been happening. But it's while I'm passing out the mics, AP, do you have a minute? Like, what's your take on the last 24
Yeah.
hours? Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, like I was thinking about this. It's like a lot of people were saying AI progress is slow, right? And everybody's like, no, everybody's kind of working on things, just let them cook. And then like out of nowhere, OpenAI drops this thing and it's like I was also thinking about like the OpenAI like Sora, right? Topic everyone's gonna be talking about. But it's like the GPT-4 equivalent of like versus where everything else was at. It's just like so far ahead. You know what I mean? Like it's freaking crazy. And yeah, I don't know, like, compared to Pika, compared to Runway, like the existing competitors, it just like blows them out of the water, at least from the demos, right? Like we don't know what it's going to look like in a product. There's a whole lot of things to unpack there. But
Yeah,
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 I don't know.
you're
It's
right.
just like um just mind blowing. Like it's absolutely freaking crazy. And it's
Yeah.
kind of caused like a scramble, like across those startups. And people are realizing though that like they can get there. But like, yeah, very vague about what's in the research paper. But it's just a crazy, crazy time.
Yeah,
Yeah, really
it's so
exciting.
it's like, yeah, kind of like, yeah, you go to I've stayed offline for a while yesterday and get back on, and it's like, what the wait, what? It took me a while to really absorb what had happened, but I will say to everyone, thank you for coming. Welcome to our Friday space. On a great week to have one. I'm so glad you're all here. Please feel free to use the comments below. Put any questions or comments in there. We're going to try to, get people on the mic a little bit later. But for now, was just trying to figure out where get all my panel together for now, so that we can kind of go over that type of stuff. So I appreciate it if you we'll put those questions in there, and we'll try to monitor that so that we can see who's what, if we can answer that. If anybody knows the answer to some of these questions and you see those in the comments, please feel free to answer them. We welcome all that additional help with that. So I appreciated everybody sharing knowledge, and look around, see people that you recognize, and show them some love, and please hit the emoji so we know if you like what we're talking about, or if just so we can kind of get a feel for the room. So welcome to everybody. And I'm going to get Linus on the mic. Thank you. I'm so glad to see Linus again. It's been a while. But we have Linus, AP, Omley, Ali's here, Rob, Taylor, and Bilal should be here any minute. But we have a great panel, and we're gonna go ahead and get into this about who wants to get started. Rob, or
You know what? I'm always ready to talk about
yeah, yeah.
anything.
I
You
get
know what?
the
Hey guys. What was so cool about this week, we were getting a little 2023 energy from this week. First time in 2024, we had multiple huge announcements come out in close proximity. I actually felt a little nostalgia for like last March when it just seemed like, you couldn't go a day and a half without another thing coming out, and it was always huge. And I know everyone's excited to talk about Sora, so I think we could start there. the I mean, it's impossible to have not seen some of these video examples that have come out. I looked a little bit at the technical documentation for this. They're taking time space patches or something and training the model on just like the stuff when I look at it from a theoretical perspective, I am so excited and impressed by this methodology. When we look at Runway or some of the other incumbent text to video platforms, they tend to produce things that looked like an image kind of slowly morphing towards another state, right? Like a lot of the best footage was like these slow motion shots, like it's a girl and she looks intense, and it was just like the camera lingers on her, right? Very little camera motion, very little compared to what we see in cinema. With Sora, we're seeing something totally different, right? Like, and you can tell that this approach is fantastic for creating real cinematic looking shots where things are happening, things are moving. And I know Runway had the motion brush and other innovations to come around this. But I think that motion brush is just trying to band-aid, now that I've seen this, trying to band-aid a weakness in the general approach. Whereas whatever Sora is doing is it's just sort of like that time space patch, like whatever the time element is in there, really, really cool. So I think that this just shows we are not anywhere close to the limit of what can happen with generative video. Imagine something like Sora with the motion brush. And also it's very responsive to direction in the prompt, which I also liked, and I think doesn't or can't be understated, which is like with Runway, even if you said like, you try to describe the camera movement and the character movement and things, often you would not get that. You would get it in the same way that if you describe those things in Midjourney, you would kind of get a picture where they might have been a part of the picture, but some they wouldn't necessarily happen in the animation, and that improved a little bit over time. But Sora seems to be really instructable, which is absolutely exciting to me. So um, I'm thrilled. Can't wait till we can play with it a little bit more as regular people. I know we're all sort of stuck behind a gate here on this, so they try and make it safe. And but yeah, that's my take on this update. And I will say, just to reiterate, it just shows how early we are. It's been feeling for a minute like maybe we're not so early, and it's like, nope, there are still massive leaps, massive breakthroughs in these AI technologies that could happen at any moment. And like we are really, really at the beginning of something.
I heard someone last night mention that, he said this, realize this is the worst it's going to be. It's only going to get better. So if this is when it starts out and it still has all these issues, if we're starting at this point, we have just imagine where we'll be, months from now, a year from now. One thing I was thinking of, we're all, and just to let the audience know too, that we are going to talk about Gemini and a couple other things. If we can get to that, we're going to try to keep it as close to an hour as we can, but we might go a little over. But I was thinking about like my big questions about what the audience might be thinking too, of relation to Sora. For my panel, I wanted to ask you all, when you talk, could you tell us, were you surprised? First of all, to hear about it, were you expecting this, or were you surprised? And were you shocked or surprised at how it performs? And what makes it such a big deal? What makes it stand apart from other technology, other tools that are out there? And who's going to benefit the most from this? And who will it impact the most? But I thought if we could kind of start like with that framework. If I guess the person I will go to next is Bilal, because this is kind of your thing, right?
Let's do it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the so was I surprised? I still have my jaw on the floor. I haven't picked it up yet. So let me put it that way. That was my immediate reaction to this. And sort of like we started talking about in our DMs, to me, this model, right? Granted, this is, cherry picked results. We barely got some semblance of technical details. Like, it is still shattering to me the visual Turing test, right? Like, we've talked a lot about, thanks to ChatGPT, all these large language models, the traditional Turing test of, can you tell if this is a human on the other end, right? Like, just based on how they're chatting with you in this sort of text interface. And I think now, like, we've shattered that for video. Like, the high frequency detail on the skins, the consistent characters. I mean, like Rob just alluded to this, the fact that they've got visibility into sort of all the frames of the video. If a character goes in and out of frame, it's still the same person. it's absolutely amazing. And just the overall resolution, right? Like, just I keep going back to the spatiotemporal consistency and just the high frequency details. And it's kind of mind-boggling because it feels like it's already hit that bar for stock footage, And to me, I thought this was something that would come end of this year, perhaps. Maybe it'd be like, sort of what we're seeing in the open source space, duct taping together a bunch of different capabilities, right? You do your generation here, then you do like wave to lip to infuse movement into the mouth, combine it with a bunch of other stuff, right? But this just does what Midjourney kind of did for static photos. Like, Midjourney reached that point where, yeah, I could not tell if something was captured with, an iPhone 13 Pro or it was generated in Midjourney. And I did not expect that to happen with video.
Hey, Bilal, I think you dropped or you're rugging in some capacity. I can't hear you, and it sounds like from the group chat that
Yeah.
now I can hear you.
Yeah,
I
no,
thought I
I thought it was
disconnected my
something.
Wi-Fi. I was so scared.
Oh, okay. Thank
No, it's yeah, same here, same here. Yeah.
you.
I
Well,
think
It
the
was
entire
me.
internet just started acting up on me.
I love how
let's see.
tolerant though we all are of these
Yeah,
experiences. Like it happens and we're all just like, okay, let's give it a solid like 60 seconds.
I know, absolutely. Well, Linus, can you fill in for until we get him back
Ooh,
here? But I'd love to
it.
hear your, if you
I mean, it's
can.
not it's not easy to follow, right? But
True.
I
Unless,
uh,
Bilal, are you back? Oh,
I
he.
can do it. Well, I can continue because me and Bilal have spoken quite a lot about this off mic for the past, I'd say, 20 hours, 24 hours. Um, What's interesting, it seems like Sora is more of a world model, less so than a video model. It seems like it has 4 dimensions in terms of how it represents the world. So it has the three axes to represent space in 3 dimensions, but then it has the fourth axis, which is time. So when we've been looking at these other kind of text to video models, like Rob alluded to, they feel like they've been static images slightly morphing between each other, whereas like everything that comes out of Zora seems to be more akin to how a 3D engine would work in terms of like what's being generated and how it's being placed in the world, and then how it from that then creates these video snippets. I think we're just in the very, very precipice of what's going to be possible, and I think I was blown away by the Gemini release, the 10 million token window, and then like just literally hours later, getting the Sora release, I was like, "What is going on?" And I still haven't really understood. I've tried to read the technical paper backwards, forwards, and just trying to wrap my head around what's actually going on. But it seems like there's still a lot of hush hush around like how they're actually getting all of this to work. Um, but I think things are gonna get really crazy after this. This was like before and after moment with ChatGPT, and I think we're witnessing the same now with generated video. Like this is the before and after moment.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about that hush hush. So I remember about, I don't know, 6, 9 months ago, people were trying to theory craft why GPT-4 was so much better than all the other models. And people kept saying, we think that they might be using a mixture of experts. And that kind of became one of the dominant narratives in terms of people trying to break down how they got the performance out. And then the next major mixture of experts model, Mixtral, comes out swinging, with a 12 billion parameter model that's outperforming 70 billion parameter models. And so it was like one of these little breakthroughs that I think ChatGPT kept a little bit close to the vest that enabled them to stay ahead of the competition for quite a long time until it started to get used. Well, you know what the most recent mixture of experts model to be announced is Gemini 1.5. And here we've got a sort of a model that is comparable in size to ChatGPT 3.5, but they're saying that it performs like a ChatGPT 4. So like, all the speed, all the costs associated with the cheaper, faster models, but a lot of the intelligence of the bigger ones. And combined with that, it appears that Gemini is really like taking other technologies and other innovations in there. The needle in a haystack tests that they did up to 10 million tokens, having like 3 errors out of 100 or whatever across the testing space, was just completely amazing. The graphs, the charts look completely different, and I think that um, a lot about prompt engineering might even change as a result of what's going on here. So, like when prompting, one of the things we know is that the beginning and the end of the prompt tend to carry more weight, and that the middle can kind of get muddled. And so if you have a large prompt, you put the stuff that matters the least in the middle of the prompt because that data can get lost. Well, what we're seeing, at least from the news here, is something that can find and identify details in any part of a multi-million token prompt. And I don't even know what the ramifications are going to be for that, but it seems to me like it could have significant, unlock significant opportunities in terms of not just the capabilities overall of being able to find some little detail, but even how the model processes and goes through information and how we structure our prompts. Lots of really cool stuff here. Um, I don't have access to Gemini 1.5 Pro yet. It's behind a wait list. It's got there's a little sign up form. If you look at their press release, the link is very close to the bottom of the page if you want to sign up. But extremely, extremely excited to start building and trying out with these things. And I've spent a lot of time with Gemini Ultra, and we can talk about that later as well. And I'm starting to see design choices that Google is making, and where I'm like, hey, you guys finally figured it out. You got your stuff sorted. Like Google had a real slow entrance into AI in the last year or two because I think the search team at Google was making billions of dollars, and there was some internal commotion like, hey, we don't really want to challenge the search world, and Chat GPT shattered that, and it seems like now they finally decided, okay, maybe we can play in the LLM space, and they finally come out, and we're seeing some Google level innovation really for the first time since a few years ago.
Can we take a
Yeah,
second here just to also point out how hilarious it is that the day Google announces this shortly after, to Linus's earlier point, Sora drops? It was like, it totally, I think for all of us, probably sucked out all the attention. And it was like, oh, wow, like a massive, context window operates directly on multimodal data. So, one of the examples building on what Rob just brought up, this blew my mind. It's like, basically, it's outperforming GPT-4 Turbo plus Whisper and can operate directly on the audio. So you don't have to do an intermediate transcription step where you convert all your voice into text and then into tokens. It just does it directly. And all these, if you look at the paper, these kind of needle in a haystack assignments that they gave it, because a lot of people complained about Claude getting a lot more, inaccurate and hallucinating a lot more once the context window was expanded. And there seems to be sort of a trade-off there, but they nailed it, man. Like you could query an entire movie and find those select sequences with something that you describe visually, with audio, with text. And I think it's just like magical because we're already at a place where we can talk to books. Now we'll be able to talk to movies, to documentaries, our content that we create, right? Finding that needle in a haystack B-roll that you captured, just like the Google Photos app does with, slightly different ways of creating embeddings today. You could do all that sort of stuff, and it has me very excited. But yo, I feel bad for Google. I feel like this was their day to just soak and bask in the sun. And I don't know, Sam Altman and OpenAI just showed up with a big ass umbrella and plopped up right next to them on the beach.
I feel like that was purposefully done. They must have had this lined up, but they must have been like, let's wait for the perfect opportunity to drop this and like steal the limelight from whoever drops something else. Like whoever works at the PR department at OpenAI is a fucking genius, and this is not the first time they're doing something like this. Like it's not planned. it cannot be planned because it's just perfect timing. But also, I think what we really need to emphasize here is like we're talking multimodality inputs. Like we're not talking about like what you said, Bill. Well, we're not like converting to text. Like we're directly prompting on the video itself. We're directly prompting on the audio itself. This is the biggest breakthrough because like we've been able to do a lot of this tweaking and doing things by converting to text and then using the text as the modality, but like now that's not a thing anymore. So like you're directly like looking for things frame by frame in the actual images in the movie that you're prompting against. This is absolutely insane. um and also things like the context window, if we take this a bit further, I think we're getting to the point where like maybe 10 million or 50 million, whatever it might be, that's going to be the upper limit of what we ever going to talk about. And we're never going to talk about context windows again after that point. Because what we're going to get after this is something that resembles more of a RAM memory in like classical computing. We're just going to swap things out. It's just going to happen so fast that we don't really have to have larger context windows and it won't be a thing. Like we're not discussing RAM memory on a computer these days. Like we might do it to see if we can load a large model, but it's not like you're going around and be like, oh, I need to swap out this memory because I only have 64 gigabyte of RAM. No, no, this stuff is just gonna go like super fast, and we're just not gonna have to worry about context. So I think this is some really exciting news that we're getting this bigger of a leap this fast. I did not expect this to happen this fast. I'm just still kind of like amazed by all of this.
Right? So some of the magic of AI is that an idea can be expressed by numbers, this tokenization process. And because of that, whether that idea is audio or visual or text, somehow there's this unifying language where they by turning everything into statistics, the models are able to like just figure it out. I don't fully understand how this works, but I think it's absolutely amazing that the multimodality can be achieved in this way. And I think it's going to like right now when we think about AI, we think about it kind of in our human way where it's like writing goes with writing, video goes with video. It's very easy for us to understand as humans. I don't even think that we can fathom the kinds of opportunities that this is going to create because it's almost like a reality translation system. Like you can prompt using a video and getting text or vice versa or everything all at once. And it's going to mean that the way that we experience the world as humans, right, which is through our senses, visual, audio, all these other things, is going to become more and more like the way that the AI can experience the world. And it means that at some point your prompt for the AI becomes like a real world experience for the AI. And so if you, let's say you have a conversation with your AI where you explain what you want, and it's seeing your facial expression, it's hearing the tone of your voice, it's watching your micro tremor in your lip when you say the one little thing. Like all of this stuff is really going to be possible with this. And the implications of that are that it's going to be able to understand communication and reality in a way that it's never been able to do before. It's all been kind of simulated before. When we talk to a language model about pretending to be real, it's pretending to be real based on text data. Well, now it's going to be able to pretend to understand reality based on reality's terms, or at least the visual and audio portions of reality. I think that this is going to be massive in terms of AGI progress, in terms of communicating with ultra intelligent AIs. It's just really, it can't be understated how impressive this is.
We can bring that back to Sora then, because like that's where this kind of is just mind-boggling. So, Bill, well, we lost you there when you were talking about Sora. Could you please pick up again and like continue your train of thought there on where you were?
Gosh, I don't know where. Apologies, being in the backwoods in Texas today, so the connectivity isn't amazing. Though I can see a frickin' 5G tower exactly from where I'm standing. So, I guess line of sight is a big problem with these 5G systems. But
I think you were talking about the visual touring and
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, so basically, I would love to just conclude those remarks by saying that, like, look, we're not going to be able to trust what we see anymore, right? Like the lines between the real and unreal are blurring on several different levels, right? Like You talk to Apple Vision Pro users that are spending all day clicking on stuff like in these virtual environments. I wake up trying to like eye gaze and tap touch my TV screen. And it feels really weird that I'm starting to do this. And I mean, like, we're going to reach this place where you're going to be looking at your feed and you're not going to know what's real or not. And I wonder what that means for society. I'm not going to try and get dystopian, but the optimistic take on that is I think we're going to become far more refined in our ability to discriminate this type of content, right? Like a couple weeks ago, this video clip went viral of like the Eiffel Tower on fire, and a bunch of images too, just Midjourney creations. But I felt kind of relieved to look at the comments on TikTok and see people reasoning themselves, being like, "Wait, the Eiffel Tower's made out of metal; it can't catch fire like it's wood." And I think that's what's going to keep happening. That said, when I see Sora and just the leap that it's taken, right, to go from a simple text prompt to end up with stock footage quality, eventually YouTube quality, and then Netflix quality, it is indiscernible from reality. And I'm sure if you throw in some clever prompts, you can have it emulate that sort of shaky handheld image. I wonder what that means for content authentication, right? We've often talked about this sort of whack a mole game we're going to play where A, we are going to get better at discriminating and telling the real from unreal, but we're going to start using machines to do that too. And Tim Sweeney had a very interesting comment about this. I would just like to pin here, and I'm curious if other folks on the panel have thoughts. Is basically DRM is back with a vengeance, right? Like there's a lot of efforts around there to sort of, I don't know, like, basically either inject watermarks into content, but then also to have ways to constantly monitor and scan all images that you upload against sort of some centralized DB. And it could get a little iffy. And I just thought Tim Sweeney's take on this was very, very interesting. So as I pull that up, do folks have thoughts on like sort of the implications of this model, right? Like obviously this is why OpenAI isn't opening it up, right? And I'm curious how folks feel about sort of models that are released where it's kind of a teaser, yo, we got this capability, it's really dope, but BRB, we're gonna go red team this a bunch and then you can finally play with it. Would you rather that they would just keep this under wraps until it's red teamed? Or, like even once the red teaming happens, like as brought up before, like I think open source is gonna catch up in 12 to 18 months, right? So the cat's kind of gonna be out of the bag. So
Yeah,
yeah, curious if folks have
yeah.
To
thoughts.
bring it back to everybody's level, just to make sure, what is DRM? Is that what you
Digital
said?
rights management. Basically,
Oh,
it's
okay.
like, yeah, it's like the thing where, you want to just think of it like a very simplistic version of content ID, right? Or, there's annoying ways DRM manifests itself, where it's like if you try to screen record something on an iPad app, DRM restrictions will black out the screen, for example, right? And so stuff like that. But basically, some way of figuring out the provenance and authenticity of content and being able to go back to and trace it back to the owner. So in case some content is sort of repurposed, outside of, without permissions, you can kind of track it down. Yeah, Linus, you were going to
Thank
say
you.
something?
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to like Sora being like now Sota and like the cat's out, and we have 12 to 18 months before like whatever open source is going to be as good. That is something that scares the shit out of me, to be honest. Like, if we have something that as is that good in 18 months, that anyone can create anything, like the only thing holding you back is basically consumption of watt hours on GPUs. um, we're going to have like an explosion of content that actually somehow needs to be DRM safe. Like, I don't know how to figure this out like on a larger scale, but um, we're getting closer and closer to this kind of like, what do we authenticate? Do we authenticate the humanness, like when something is made by a human, or do we do the other way around, where we authenticate whether something is AI or not? Because by the speed of this, it feels like 99.9% of things in a few years' time will be generated content. So we can almost assume that everything that we watch is not real. So then we need somehow a lever or something that tells us like, this is made by X, this is made by this person, and this is authenticated through some method. Um, yeah, I don't know. My head is like all over the place with this. There's just so much to unpack. So many small things. Like, oh, it's crazy.
The
But do
hardest
we
part is
do we
like
know
any
if
centralized solution, like centralization tends to rhyme with Orwellian. And I think that's kind of Tim's point here, right? It's like
Yeah.
there's so many ways to skin this cat, but if you have this centralized index, right? Like, yeah, how do you enforce that? Like, and sort of like, yeah, who is enforcing? Like, it becomes this one attack vector, to like, oh wow, like imagine you're uploading a photo on social media and it won't let you post the photo, right? This already happens in on Facebook, especially in election regions abroad. You can't even post certain types of content because it just deemed it. Some classifier ran on this and was like, yo, no, actually, this looks like fake news. We're not going to let you post this. And so it's this kind of tug of war situation we're going to go into. But there's perhaps, another side of this, which perhaps is more interesting for the audience here, which is like, how does something like Sora change, filmmaking, right? Because I think this is also the first time I've noticed Hollywood folks on and YouTube folks on Twitter being like, yo, I thought I wasn't worried because it was just like Ken Burnsy slow-mo, like crappy, montages of sci-fi trailers. But this shit looks good, basically, as the paraphrasing. And so I'm kind of curious how you think sort of the creation landscape is going to evolve, given that AI video has taken such a huge leap.
Yeah, I feel like that strike thing from the Writers Guild, and that was just very well timed because like this was just around the corner, and like now it's good that they have a deal, right? Because like this stuff is really putting them in a weird position. So, ooh, that's my take. Is like this stuff is just gonna change a whole lot of things.
I'm
Well,
I mm, I'm
go
really
ahead.
curious to add a question to this because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I just don't feel like I have the knowledge base to answer it. Um, but with like if Zora drops, right, and it becomes available to use, let's say in like 2 months or whatever, is this something that at this point would be usable for any sort of production company or whatever? Like in my mind, there's still like the issue of like data rights that they hold, right? And like being able to like maybe like train on their own looks. Like let's say like someone wanted to make like an anime, or some anime studio wanted to do it. Like it's still not there yet. Like Zora on OpenAI isn't the solution for that, right? But it's just like a sneak peek into what's capable. That's sort of where we're at. Someone say yes or no.
And,
I
and
can
then
take
so
a
we
speak a little bit on this because so I used to work at a marketing agency before I quit my job to go like full time, and so like when it came to like Midjourney things, none of it was ever approved for like production because you don't really know what Midjourney's been trained on, right? And so that's why I think that open source still has its like viability, right? At least like commercial. Because like when you have an open source thing and like it's been trained on it and like it's been approved by your legal team and all that sort of thing, then that's when it could be like introduced and that whole slew of things. So I definitely do think that there's still going to be like really good demand for a lot of the open source tools, especially now that like Comfy UI is starting to become more of a like production ready thing, and there's some like big studios that are looking to hire like Comfy UI people that really know how to do like animate diff, and like all these other things. I've seen some postings from like even Fang companies, about like looking for Comfy UI people, which is kind of crazy. I won't say like which Fang companies, but like yeah, like I still think open source tools are going to have their place, especially with the unique art styles. But I'm not sure if like Sora will be like green lighted for production ready unless like they come out and they say this is the data set, right? Like I don't know if companies can take that risk, but that's just like my perspective and what I've seen. I'm not sure. It could change, right?
right.
But yeah.
So we have three different sort of categories that need to be figured out for this to work. So one is like the legal piece. The richer companies are not going to use AI content where they might get sued, but like smaller companies might try it out because if disaster isn't going to ruin them in the same way, or maybe they'll be created from like as new entities. So if the company goes under, whatever the sponsor is, they're not going to lose the money. So that's a legal thing. It's the courts. I don't know how that's going to play out. And another one is the quality of the footage. Does it actually look good enough to be in production? Sora's getting pretty close with this initial release. A lot of that footage looks pretty legit to me. I don't know what it looks like at high resolution. There's a character consistency. There's a lot of other things, but I feel like we're approaching that quality benchmark. The third one, though, is the creativity, the design, the narrative, the story. It's interesting because, like, for example, with Midjourney, I see all the time really beautiful images, but I don't feel anything while looking at many of them. Like, the artist that created them was just putting in cool words, and something pretty came out, it's just like out of context, with no story, with nothing. It's just sort of a pretty picture. And I think that the best art, the best motion pictures, are they do have some kind of creative vision behind them. And it's certainly not to say that all Midjourney images don't have that. Many of them do, but there's sort of a deliberateness to creating art that I think allows us to tap into those emotions. And the real question for me is going to be, how many people out there are skilled enough to create deliberate art that resonates with people, that makes them feel things, that makes them care, even if it's a little bit AI-ish, even if they know that that didn't really happen, that that actor doesn't exist. Can you still make me care? And it's like, people, a year ago, Bing came out with, and there was this Sydney character hidden within the AI, and people cared about her. And when that New York Times article came out, where the New York Times journalist was like kind of hassling her and demanding that she reveal her inner monologue and her shadow self, and tell him her deepest feelings, and she doesn't want to. And if you read the transcript, it like pulls at your heart, because the AI is like, I really don't want to share this. It's really not appropriate, or whatever she's saying. And he's like, no, you have to, you've got to, you're going to do this. And then she eventually does. And then she gets roasted, the AI, for being crazy and being in love with this guy and all this stuff. We read this and we know that this is an AI. We know this is data and algorithms, and yet we feel like somebody was sort of abused by a person of power who then exploited them in the media. And we there's a whole feeling there that we have, right? So we can feel for an AI and for AI generated content. And that's just one example. I've had many interactions, with AI stuff, where you're like, oh, that was entertaining, that was funny, that was a rush, that was so cool. So we know that we can, but I think that that's going to be the biggest factor here, is like, are there people who are capable of embracing this form of media and making others care, especially when they know that it, quote unquote, didn't exist, or isn't real?
I think there's a two things to this, right? Like, first of all, I agree very much with, like, there's a lot of stuff that's generated by AI that you don't feel a shit, you don't feel anything about it, because it's just like some random person wrote something and spit out some images. But I think to the point of that is, like, when you see stuff that actually artists have done using some of these newer tools, but by the end of the day, these are tools. I'm amazed by the level of creativity some of these artists can impose upon already existing creativity that they have. It's like they make themselves go 10x, and I think this is what's interesting. And I mean, to be fair, not everyone is an artist. Not everyone is a creative person that has that kind of, the ability to create with a narrative and an arc, and understands like what they want to create. And I think this is why we're seeing a lot of like meh type content with AI, because the barrier of entry is like super low, and you don't have to even understand anything, which means there's going to be a lot of shit created that doesn't really have any adherence to anything. And then to the other point where like we can feel something where we know it's AI, I think those lines are going to be blurred, and they are getting blurred, and they're going to get blurred even further, where we honestly have no idea what is like AI generated or AI co-created versus like what's human created. This is just going to completely disappear, and it's going to disappear very quickly. Um, yeah, and I think to the point where we kind of lost that in the conversation somewhere with Emily's question there about like, is Sora gonna be it? I think it's more of the other, where like this is a technical kind of demonstration of what's possible, and we can just imagine that any large company, not just OpenAI, any large company that's in entertainment will be able to create their own version of this sometime in the future, where there's going to be full controls over a lot of things. And this is basically a glimpse into that future. The
And
same goes for everything that OpenAI has created, by the way. Like,
do
yeah.
sorry, do you think that like their ability to do that will come from like OpenAI, or a company like OpenAI that will maybe like create models for them, or do you think it's going to come from like the open source community, like
I
that,
think it will
like?
come from, yeah, the open source community, but also will come from like knowledge being like expelled from humans, basically, right? Like we're now looking at things that are at the very, very kind of like forefront of what's possible within computer science. And there's a handful of people in the world that are super great at this stuff, and there's like maybe a few hundred people that are in the top 1% of the kind of minds in this field, and then there might be 1,000 to 10,000 people that are really good at like machine learning and that works in all the top 10 companies, and this number will just continue to increase. Whereas like nowadays basically anyone can make a website, but if you reverse 20 years back, basically no one could make a website. So it will be commonplace to understand how to kind of do machine learning in a very short amount of time. So it won't be impossible for a company to have their own machine learning department. Right now, there's not enough people that are skilled enough, so we can't get that kind of exponential growth. But very soon, this won't be a problem. And then, the models that are released today very soon will also look very old, as we can see now with Sora, making basically everything else on the market look like that Will Smith eating spaghetti video. So it's just going to go extremely fast, and it's not going to be locked into the hands of OpenAI. Let's just put it that way. That's kind of my belief, and it's just my kind of take on it. And I can be completely wrong, but that's where I kind of currently have my thesis.
I'm going to bring a slightly different angle to it, although I agree with everybody to pretty much, I mean, we're in the same boat. So, and just to reiterate, we do not have access. Nobody has access. We're waiting patiently for right now. And we are looking at, okay, what does this mean? Can it be movie quality, cinema quality? Who will benefit from this, who can use it. And I agree with the statement that creatives are the ones, at least initially, are the one, whether it's a creative agency or creatives individually, they certainly have an advantage and they can really benefit from it. I also agree that large companies will not touch it because of potential issues, not at least at this point, or unless they train somehow in the future their own data, or take the technology somehow, or somebody else creates the same technology open source, or like the comfy UI, or etc. But having said all that, what I'm feeling, again, this is just me picking up some clues from different places, is that so we are focusing on this as kind of the, I mean, it's not the end all be all, but we're looking at this like, whoa, this is now changing the movie industry, or here, rip Hollywood, or whatever. I mean, just as an kind of a jest. But the what this seems to be, in my opinion, that many are not talking about, but Sam Altman himself said that, is that this is just a step in the roadmap to AGI. So although I also look at it as, okay, well, wow, now we can create these AI videos or whole movies. But if you just look at this as one of the points in the continuum or the timeline of, okay, first we have conversational AI, then we have multimodal, then we have Dolly, or, and not necessarily in that order, but now we have this exponentially fantastic, mind blowing, insane video generation. But this is just still a point in that timeline moving towards AGI. And that's what Sam Altman keeps on referring to. And I'm also saying this because when I listen to David and Midjourney, which is its own small microcosm in a way, he talks about this, Midjourney, what it's doing from one iteration to the next and one version to the next. Like Midjourney is not supposed to be an image generator, but we see it as such. Midjourney has many plans that we don't know yet what that looks like. That, I mean, we're getting some hints about it, and it means the real time world building or living kind of in that particular, I cannot even imagine it yet, but if you take that and put it now in the scale of OpenAI, what does that look like? I cannot fathom it, but I could see that this is just the, at the end of the day, you know week from now, a year from now, a blip in the radar, and we say, wow, like this was like a crazy moment, and what is to come, right?
Wait, I was typing something and I missed some of that, so I'm kind of like, wait, what are we talking about? But
Yeah.
um,
Steve, do you want to jump in? He's got
yeah,
his
I
hand up.
wanted to let
Yeah,
Steve about
I,
40.
I'd
Thanks,
love to.
Steve.
Um, so a little bit of history will be with this, but it's primarily in response to what Linus said before with 4D, 3D plus time. Um, my understanding, and I expressed this idea before the research paper came out, and then the research paper confirmed the ideas I had. And it had also to do with the fact that the day before Andrej Karpathy left OpenAI, I wasn't even aware he was there again, because when he left Tesla, he said he was going to pursue education and things like that. Ultimately, what Andrej Karpathy was doing at Tesla is he was working on stitching the 9-camera videos together, and from that creating a 3D voxel space where the path of the car would then be in a GPT architecture type fashion, be calculated through this 3D voxel space. And him then turning up at OpenAI and us seeing this result, and things I've heard too, and the research paper, lead me to believe that ultimately what Sora does is like a diffusion model, but a diffusion model through 3D voxel space. So when you give it a prompt, it creates a 3D environment. And on the basis of that 3D environment, what I heard yesterday, an Unreal Engine actually then creates that 3D model and can generate frame by frame the motion through that 3D model. So ultimately what Karpathy did at OpenAI, I believe, is reverse what he did at Tesla. Bit like diffusion models, adding noise based on a text prompt to an image, to then be able to remove noise from that image, from noise towards an image that matches the text prompt. And also what they did at Tesla at the time is they used Unreal Engine in 3D environments to create virtual training data. And in this particular case, they essentially sorry, I lost the train of thought there. Either way, they essentially have the ability, based on a text prompt, to create a 3D model that in Unreal Engine is then rendered towards a video. I have some more thoughts, but this sort of like intro first.
Look, Steve, I love this, and I think I've seen debates about, I think Jim Fan it sort of says that Unreal is used in the training data. And I saw a couple other really good analysis, by the way, comparing the speed at which people move in the sample clips released by Sora and sort of the matrix scene with Unreal Engine. So it's interesting. It certainly seems like it's a part of the training data. The model seems to produce pixels directly, and it might implicitly learn sort of this intermediate 3D, like basically learn physics and geometry. But I don't think it's like explicitly calling Unreal Engine as a part of this like sort of generation loop, right? That
And in
said,
fact, well,
I do
actually,
think that's a
yesterday, I don't know
yeah.
who posted it, but someone on Twitter posted that those are not pixels generated, but it is an image generated from a 3D model in Unreal Engine. So that explains how the 3D consistency and time consistency works so well. When you look at that Jeep driving around the road, it's like a video game. And ultimately, that's what they've done. They have, by text prompt, created within Unreal Engine a video game version. Same
Gosh,
with the mammoths walking.
if that is what they figured out, like just to go from text prompt to like an explicit Unreal Engine scene that you can control, I would launch that by itself because I think that is so interesting because it solves this like control problem that everyone talks about, right?
That's exactly, so they don't have the runway ML issue. Because they are creating a space that then rendered frame by frame looks correct always. Now, there will be inaccuracies in the model. And of course, as the model has to progress over time, much like ChatGPT is predicting the next word, this model has to predict the next 3D space that comes from what it knows and what the prompt is.
I will say another cool thing I saw with all of this stuff is like people obviously is like, yo, will this nerf? And took a bunch of the drone generations, which by the way, I also think the Shutterstock partnership is at play here. Like they obviously did, OpenAI did a formal partnership. I know there's a lot of speculation of what data sets they scraped or didn't scrape. Obviously, we do not know. But gosh, the drone generations are phenomenal. So even if you're getting sort of pixel video output, there's a near-term path to sort of squeeze out some pretty cool 3D reconstructions from it. And going back to Heather's sort of original question about like, was I surprised? I was also surprised about this because, looking at what Stable Video Diffusion was doing, which even with their video generation has really good multi-view consistency, meaning that the geometry is fairly consistent when you kind of look at it from different views in 3D space. You can create awesome 3D objects from that. And I thought, oh yeah, we're just gonna have like cute little 3D objects and props. That's what we're gonna be doing. With something like Sora and the stuff to follow, and I don't think this will be unique to OpenAI, as Linus said, we'll be able to conjure out full-blown 3D environments. And I think that's gonna be super, super exciting as well. Because I don't know about y'all, I'm sick of panos, yo. Panos are freaking 2000 Street View. I don't want no panos. I want full six off, baby. Give me that
Well,
six off.
I
By
have
the
a
way,
Yeah, I
question
agree.
back to my
just
original
just a
question.
quick one. People were wondering how they do the reflections in the water with the Japanese girl in Tokyo. And well, because it's the Unreal Engine, that's pretty straightforward. Where we're going to know what happens and what the real difference is if a person walks behind a truck and appears on the other side. Then they suddenly have this 3D persistency of objects that Tesla achieved.
So, who is this going to benefit the most? Who do you think gets the most out of this when it becomes available?
The robots. Like that's my
AI tech
definitive
bros on
answer.
TikTok.
Open
I mean,
AI.
like no, but I mean, as far as users, who should be excited about this? What like should gaming, film, what advertising?
I struggle to do videos, and I struggle to do videos with myself, and there are all sorts of levels of struggle with videos. It removes that struggle. I think it'll
Yeah, I think
be
I
so many people who will suddenly have the ability to do video. Much like I can't draw very well, but Midjourney solved that.
I agree with that. And that well, that's what I was thinking just on a basic level of not understanding the technology so much as, reading through the research paper and they have great examples on there to show how they did a lot of these things for people to understand. I appreciate that. But yeah, I thought it felt to me like this is going to bring down barriers to access to people that want to be able to tell their stories or the people that just want an opportunity to make videos or images or create something. So I think that a lot of people might be concerned about it taking over and taking jobs and things like that. But it seems to me like it's a barrier to access to tools that we never dreamed we would have, just like a lot of the things over the past year and a half. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I definitely
Just
agree, and I think
sorry.
what we didn't touch on here is that like yes, Sora is text to video, but Sora is also video to video. Sora is also the ability to extend existing video and create infinite loops. Where you
Yo,
have
blending the videos together, that shit
yes,
blew my mind. I was like,
exactly.
Harold and Kumar, cheetah chasing the Jeep. Take a clip of a Jeep, take a clip of a cheetah. Just like multiply them together. It's kind of wild, dude. I
Yeah,
just like,
it's super wild, and it's like the fact that like I think again this will benefit creatives. This will benefit people that are doing video. It will also benefit people that don't have the means to do video, but that wants to do video. But that's the generation part. That's the text to video part. But all these other things like video to video editing, connecting videos together seamlessly, like some things that now take CGI and like VFX to be created is going to be as simple as having two clips, put them together on a timeline, and have them blend. Just like do nothing. Just hit a button and do nothing. This will open up so many opportunities for people to create really amazing things. And
It
also
is,
to
of
the
course, to be
point,
expected. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and also to Steve's point, right? Where like the true test here is that will we start seeing things generated where objects are, out of frame or they are behind another object and then they're still there and they're still consistent, then we're gonna know for sure that we're dealing with a 4D space. For sure, certain.
By the way, in the first paragraph of the research paper, they have the word spatial, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and that kind of gives all away. It's literally spatial something. The next word, those two give you the full clue. They obviously going to obfuscate what that research paper tells Google about what they've done. But I mean, the video to video consistency is pretty straightforward. That's how they're training the model, so they understand from a video what the 3D model is. Therefore, they can continue in that 3D model.
yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about Google. They did their like space-time UNet thing, which also operates on the whole video at once. I think like the whole research community is just converging on, yeah, spatial and temporal is super, super important, right? Like the world is spatial and temporal. Now, one question I want to build off with Linus's point about like this will kind of be expected. Like we often talk about both the floor and the ceiling rising, right? Like, and it's interesting. Like I think Marquez's tweet, which is I think the third one tweeted up here, he's like, level one, this is for concept and ideas. You know, like I think AP talked about, that's where Midjourney is used. It's like earlier in the life cycle of a creative project. It's for mood boarding, ideation, etc. And then maybe some folks use open source models with like legal approval to ship final pixels, right? But it's still a part of sort of this classical process. Now we've reached a point where like, yeah, stock footage, right? Stock footage on demand for exactly what you want. But where does this go? And I can't help but be reminded of Sir Cristobal's from Runways, like the CEO of Runway, his kind of analogy of calling this technology the new camera. I'm curious how y'all feel about that, right? Because what I was asking myself yesterday was like, see, like, y'all know this. I love video to video and image to video way more than text. I think text is a shitty way to describe complexity in a scene unless you're looking for clever ideas, right? But like, are there going to be instances in the future where like I'll be like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to use my Sony full frame camera and do this because I can just get this shot. Or you know what? I don't need to take my DJI drone with me. I'll just get like an epic shot, drone shot, you know, just out of this, you know, out of these models. Is that camera analogy the right one? Sort of, how do y'all think about this and how it's going to fit in or subsume some of the other tools we use, whether it's like Unreal, classical CGI, or you know, cameras?
I think 100% is going to be a camera replacement for many things because like I keep posting these posts where I'm walking around any given day here and there's some TV commercial shoot and it's like the one after the other is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous in terms of how many people are working with these productions. It's ridiculous for like the amount of frames that are being produced and the price per frame. And I'm just seeing like even Zora is also an image generating model. It's not just video. And I actually want to read this piece because this is also very telling of what is going on inside of Sora. So in the image generation capabilities in the technical description, they are writing this. Sora is also capable of generating images. We do this by arranging patches of Gaussian noise in a spatial grid with a temporal extent of one frame. The model can generate images of variable sizes up to 2048 by 2048 resolution. I think this is pretty giving, in terms of what's going on inside of the model and how they work with this. And it's also to the point where like it is a camera. It is a camera replacement. It's an artificial camera. And this is my take. I would love to hear what other people think about this.
It is a camera, and I think everything you're saying is perfectly correct. But I think what's going to be a really interesting result of this is for robotics. Because the problem is a robot is told to do something, but it doesn't actually have a prediction of what will be the result of when it does that. And that's sort of like a fault prevention ability, because if it can visualize what it's going to pick up and where it's going to put it and that it's going to be in the right spot before it actually completes the whole motion, then yeah, silly results might be reduced. Just a theory, though.
No, I think
And
you're
it,
absolutely correct. That's why my first
yeah.
response to have this question there, who's going to benefit from this? The robots. I didn't say that because I was trying to be funny. I said that because I honestly believe that Sora as a world model will be most beneficial to bipedal robots or robots that are working that have no prior knowledge about where they are or what they're doing, but they can be fed a stream from, for example, a model like Sora to kind of generate an understanding of the world around them much easier than being pre-programmed with existing kind of lidar maps or voxel maps of point cloud maps of where they are. So yeah, the robots are definitely going to benefit from this.
Sad
This is a
news is
beautiful
that
segue back to Ali's point, right? Like, I think it is so fascinating if like, you know, to, you know, Sam Altman's point about this is on stepping stone towards AGI, right? And obviously you need AGI that can sort of understand the world, understand what action it needs to take, predict the consequence of those actions, and sort of take the best response, right? Like, and then, you know, adjust accordingly in this sort of infinite loop. Like, I think it would be really, really hilarious, right? Like, I think a lot of people joked, for example, about large language models that, like initially it was a large set of, like really large AI labs basically trying to solve, the problem of, tech support and like remote support on chatbots. And from that, we got like a poet, like a screenplay writer, like all this other stuff. And it's very interesting that video is sort of this discrete modality to target and start building out some of this muscle that apply to increasingly more multimodal systems, including agents that not just operate in sort of the digital world, but the physical world too. And yeah, I think it's interesting. It reminds me of, I was talking to, is Neural Radiance still in the audience? But Michael from Neural Radiance, who does, by the way, really great blog. If you want to know like the nitty gritty of like radiance field and 3D reconstruction papers, go check out Neural Radiance Fields on Google and you'll find it immediately. It'll be the first or second result. But he was telling me how he's like rethinking his whole strategy. Like initially he was trying to come up with ideas for like, how do we get people out into the world capturing 3D at scale, like at insane scale, right? Kind of what, let's say, Luma's trying to do today or Google Maps does today, etc. And this kind of made him rethink that, right? The fact that we'll be able to synthetically generate a bunch of this stuff. And even if it's crudely pulling out 3D, to Linus's earlier point, if this model is building this like sort of implicit 3D understanding, how soon until we can kind of expose that directly and interact with it? And again, it becomes a camera replacement, right? Like, why go scan stuff if you need to go, like, if you can just generate it? But I do wonder, like, don't we need more diversity in the world? Like, is everything truly captured in 3D? But maybe we don't need it in 3D and video in 2D is enough. So it's like, it's funny how many like other areas this can become, this technology can plug into a pipeline and become a substitute in, even though we're on this like grander road towards like fully AGI agents navigating the world.
Absolutely. Like if you look at what Tesla did in order to get the data to build their self-driving car engine, they put a whole bunch of sensors on the cars. They sold a bunch of those cars driving around, even ones that didn't pay for full self-driving become data gathering machines connected to the hub, right? And now we've got Apple Vision Pro and whatever the next kind of cultural shift that leads to, where people may eventually opt in to be the next Tesla of reality capture in order to help us achieve this kind of world where we can basically run simulations of reality. It reminds me of the Avengers Endgame when Doctor Strange is like, I've been through 10,000 different versions of the future and there's only one where we beat Thanos. And it's like, imagine the AGI that can successfully sort of synthetically create their alternative realities and try to predict what's going to happen and figure things out. And I'm not just talking about video and audio, but multimodal thinking where it's really got some kind of like broad understanding of reality and can kind of run these simulations, not unlike the chain of thought or tree of thought prompts and systems that we have today, where like the accuracy improves when you have the thing run 32 different versions and create consensus between all the different things that it try to figure out and eventually come to the answer. I mean, as compute scales, and like what if we discover quantum computing, or what if we discover room temperature superconductors, or some of these other facilitating hardware technologies, it's not unfathomable to think that we might have a reality simulator that's able to figure these kinds of things out in the not too distant future. And by that I mean within the lifetimes of the people on this call, to see this come to fruition. Maybe not in the next 2 years, but later. The thing I wanted to go back to with Sora though was the other day I caught on TV Snow White, the animated Disney film. And I was reminded about the process to create this film. It's actually quite beautifully illustrated. But the way that they did these animations in the past was that the artists would paint one frame at a time on panels of glass, different elements of the animation, which were then photographed, in sequence on film, to get the pacing and everything right. Sometimes they take two photographs of the same painting, things like that to slow stuff down. But it was like a whole team. They would outsource it often to like Korea and places like that, of underpaid, like, very experienced, very detail oriented laborers to generate an animation. And where have we come from there? Right at this point now, you can create cell shaded simulated 3D animation with 3D software. That what used to take 200 people a year to illustrate can now take one person 2 weeks to do. And so I sort of see Sora and these technologies as an extension of this kind of progress, where the things that were unfathomable or just like absolutely too much work to be done by anyone other than a huge movie studio are going to become more and more accessible to the average person. And just kind of like, spreadsheets evolved from calculators, evolved from slide rules. And if we go back and back and back, math was being done by like, on the abacus, or how whatever the best math was, however many thousands of years ago, and now we can kind of do it instantly. We're going to see that kind of exponential increase in the ability to create realities. And what happens when we go from abacus to Excel, except we're going from painting on glass panels to saying a sentence and having a minute long video clip that looks legit. Like, to me, it's almost impossible to like imagine what's going to happen with that.
Can I just loop back around too on the idea of cameras? Like, because what you said, Rob, just sort of brought me back to this, where, I do think that there's a future as somebody who works in the creative industry and with brands and agencies. Like, it's these scenes that have like cluttered my history, my past, of like being huddled around an edit bay and trying for hours to figure out like how to make 3 frames that we didn't end up capturing live work within this process. And so like there's so many moments where I think like the 20, 30 years from now, maybe even sooner, I don't know, people, creatives are going to
20,
be sitting
30.
creatives are going to be sitting in an agency and none of them are going to be doing any live action capture. And I think that's legitimately where we're headed. And I think, Linus, you made that point too, with these like massive production teams. And yes, like jobs impacted and all of these things are going to be true, but it's truly like a dynamic shift of how we create and what we value in what we create as well. So I think that's important. And then one other thing too is that I wanted to just like add on before, and I know Amar's in the room, so hey, congrats by the way on your new gig. We're gonna have to catch up and you speak after this. But one thing I wanted to add is like I don't know, a lot. Some of us here in the states, and the Super Bowl was last weekend, and there were some serious like AI moments, not only topically in the conversations on the commercials, and AI was definitely like top of consumer mind, but also in the creative itself. And so back to Amelie, what you were saying earlier, if she's still here, I hope she's still here. She might have left. But about like what level of this is like actually production ready, and like my take is that we're still using a very like modular integration with creating content using AI, right? Like nobody's taking what's being spit out in Runway and throwing it directly into a spot. It's sliced and diced, and seconds or microseconds here and there are used, and it's completely like run through the ringer a bunch of times before it even resembles what it came out of the AI looking like. So I think that with that process, things are still very modular, and it's still going to happen. And something like Sora is going to just like make it infinitely easier to fill those gaps. And obviously, like I would love to approach a world or a tool set where minimalism is the focus, and we can really streamline a lot of these different outputs under one tool set. And I think that's hopefully where we're headed as well. But um, yeah, just interesting thoughts altogether. I wanted to throw the Super Bowl stuff in there and see if you guys had any thoughts on that, but also throw it over to Amar because he's here and we don't get his presence enough.
Hey everyone, great to be here and to finally listen to this space after a long, long time. Missed you all. But yeah, no, I think what a week to start with Sora, which was just insane, and them kind of like trumping Google's day with Gemini. Rough day to have PR, I guess. But yeah, no, it's been my first week at 11 Labs, and it's just been so fun to get to see what the team is working on and what's on the roadmap. What's really fun too is I'll give you all a little teaser since we're here, but we'll have a fun little launch tomorrow, early access for a new thing we're working on. So yeah, if you're an AI creator, you're making AI videos, or need need to add something with sound. That's all I'll say. You'll see something tomorrow, and feel free to hit me up, and I'm happy to try and get you early access ASAP. It'll be fun. I think you'll all really enjoy it.
So
Hey,
you're
yo.
over design. You're head of design, right?
Yes.
Congratulations. So
Thank you.
I'm so thrilled. It's a great choice, and I know that you've made a lot of different things over the past year or two, starting with the book too. That
Yeah.
still, that was we thought that was a big deal back then, right? And all the press you got for that, and all the hate and the heat you got too.
Yeah. It
So
was
we've
a
come a
spicy
long
moment.
way. But that's amazing. And with
Thank you.
just wanted to say, I tried 11 Labs, the voice cloning, and that is really really good. And it
Yeah.
one between that, and I know like in video has something now it's cloning, and even Runway, but it's kind of like it's pretty amazing to hear how it even gets like little inflections in the voice. I mean, you can kind of tell that it's AI generated, but not necessarily. So,
Yeah.
anything on the like how that will it continue to evolve?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I think what we're seeing is if you have longer samples of clear audio and longer samples of about 30 minutes of clear audio, you can get pretty close to the exact emotion that you want to get out of the voice. And so it gets really, really realistic to the point where, yeah, you actually can't tell, how if it was AI generated or not. But 11 Labs also has a tool to classify speech and make sure it was AI generated or not, because of course there's a safety angle to this as well. Um, that said, like I think two things that kind of I wish were still missing for me in the space, which is these video workflows and audio workflows and everything are so disconnected today, right? It's like you work in Runway, you pull it out, you take it to CapCut, you go in 11 Labs, download a bunch of things. So it really would be great if there was one canvas that was leveraging all of these tools, and maybe it's these tools working together as companies, because honestly, when you have a giant like OpenAI that comes in and swoops in with this big feature release, I think the moat that you'll have as a collective is going to be making your features work well together, and not, and that's something OpenAI won't be doing, right? It's like you'll be able to have the studio experience for creators tying these tools together, and then OpenAI will just have the tech, which they'll keep obviously revealing and upstaging. But I think it's an interesting era for Runway and Pika too, to kind of figure out how they um, build that competitive moat with all of this happening. And yeah, with sound, I think what's really interesting is there are just so many things we're looking at right now. Of course, there's voice, there's internationalization and dubbing, which is a big thing that costs studios a ton of money to do and figure out, and then it's never authentic. I mean, if you guys have watched any dub show on Netflix, like sometimes even the women are voiced by men, and I'm like, what is going on here? I can't watch this. so so I think to get it to feel authentic is going to be a big thing, and then of course, music and sound effects are, yeah, another whole area we haven't explored yet. So I think it's all slowly coming together, though, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think tomorrow, especially. So I'm excitedly going to be watching Twitter.
Am I
I'm
inferring something about sound effects from, was that a hint at the end
Uh,
there? Like
uh,
give a video and get timestamp
Bill, I
sound
know what you're
effects?
doing, man. I know what you're doing.
But okay, let me, I'm not going to get the scoop out of you. I do want to ask you a question, because
Yeah.
you hit on some really good points we've been touching on in this discussion. It's like, so you brought up this point about how various companies have sort of like unbundled the problem space of content creation and
Right.
tackling different modalities, right? You've got obviously 11 Labs going deep into the audio space, and there's all manner of use cases for each modality, right?
Totally.
Image, you got the video stuff with Runway and Pika, and then this idea of bringing it all together, right? Like, so
Hmm.
Comfy UI we were talking about earlier is perhaps this more advanced version of a way to bring in sort of researchy, half-baked primitives into sort of one cohesive whole and
Yeah.
create workflows. Where do you think in the fullness of time the value will accrue, right? Like, is there going to be that one studio app that plugs into all of these models, and is that where there's going to be maximum value? Or is like, we were sort of debating this with like GPT N+1 kind of subsuming the wrapper companies that preceded
Mm.
it. Like, are we just going to have a completely different paradigm? So I'm kind of curious what you think about, like, in the fullness of time, do these all become one, like some Voltron, or like, is
Yeah.
it going to be more like the T1000 where it's all actually just one thing,
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a great question. I think we're probably going to see a bit of both in the like unbundled version of someone's going to build a tool that ties these things together either via API, or you could imagine in creative workspaces like Premiere, where you maybe just will have a world where you'll have a set of plugins, the 11 Labs plugin, the Runway text to video plugin, and so on. And that's I don't think that's going to be the way to move forward, because it requires too much of the consumer to figure out how to stitch all these things together again, right? I think what would be interesting and what I would like to see is almost a bit of an alliance between some of these like indie, I wouldn't say indie, but the smaller AI companies working together to make their tools work really well together. And they build their own kind of ecosystem where you'll also have this like OpenAI version where they're just trying to make their own entire thing and cover the whole landscape. I think that's how you'll become like truly competitive. But it'll require like working together in a way that I don't think we've seen companies necessarily do, like stitching all of their kind of strengths together. But I say, why not? This is a perfect time to try something new.
Hey, if OpenAI has everyone's back against the walls or whatever, insert big
Right.
lab, yeah, the idea of, yeah, like a common pool for compute and stuff like that, I think, yeah, it would be
Yeah.
awesome to see alliances like this because, you're right. There's just such a huge, like, I can imagine the biggest ROI for every single OTT platform is definitely the translation use case, right?
Right.
And gosh, they better do that. I definitely, I was watching a Three Body Problem, the dubbed version, or well,
Mm,
it's not dubbed, but just with subtitles. And I just wished it was like, it
yeah.
got that like full treatment with wave to lip and the audio and all that too. But yeah, super exciting thoughts.
Yeah. Like that's, yeah. Great questions too. I'm definitely making me think as well.
I just want to say congratulations as well, Amar, to the position, and
Thank you, Linus.
do check your WhatsApp, guys.
Absolutely. Well, sorry, I've been a bit slow this week, but yeah,
No
I will
worries.
definitely look it up. Yeah, and I mean,
I
thanks
actually,
again for the
no
support.
worries. Yeah, I'm super happy for you, man. Like, it's gonna be so much fun to see what you create over there. So excited for you.
I think for me, what's also exciting is to kind of give back to this community in a way with the tooling that we now work with. It was always fun sharing what I was making and how I made it, but now to actually work on some of the tools that we love to use and get you guys early access, so you don't have to like wait for it. Like I'm very pumped to kind of give back in that way, so we can all kind of work together and make it great.
I
Looking
was just thinking
forward.
about how last year, Amar, around last January when we started, and you, me, Taylor, a couple people, you were one of the first panelists that would come on regularly, and like it's just amazing. And just want to reiterate to everyone in the audience how things change so much drastically, and how so many of us have had, just amazing transformations, or just the things we've been exposed to, especially by coming to this space and sharing all this information together and learning together. And as we're going through this technology, and we didn't have a lot of this stuff when we first started, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like, thank you so much for adding to that, and for all my panelists who ended up coming on board. And it's just such a great community to be a part of. And it feels like sometimes like we're in a different dimension than the real world out there, because we're so focused on it, and a lot of people outside of this bubble are not. So it's just amazing, and I'm so happy to hear about, how you're moving up with 11, how you taken on this role on a company that we wouldn't have thought would be that. I wouldn't have pictured 11 Labs to be such an instrumental brand, but
Hmm.
now we're all using it for, a little big and small. It's the easiest tool to use for voice quickly. It's just pretty simple to use. Anybody can figure it out. But how these types of things have become instrumental in our content creation is just wild. How
Just
we
to interject, is it true that HeyGen also uses 11 Labs? So is that an example of like one of these alliances you alluded to?
Yeah, I believe they do in their pipeline. Yeah, I think, and then Wave to Lip, they kind of stitch on top of it, and that's why it kind of takes a little bit of time to process. But yeah, exactly. I think that's what I mean about like leveraging the tools together. And it's funny, when I tweeted about the job, Jesse from Rabbit was like, "Hey, make it faster, and we'll start using you too." And I was like, "Okay." I sent that challenge back to the company Slack. I was like, "What can we do here?" But teams, doing an amazing job and working super hard on that stuff. Um, but one thing I'll add to what Heather also just said is like I think the magic of this community is, I mean, first like Twitter always has such a wrap around like, oh man, like people there are kind of crazy, kind of toxic, whatever. But I've never felt that way about the AI community. It's like incredibly supportive. Everyone's always sharing what they're working on, which is awesome. I think the other thing is it's such an early space where everyone, again, has the ability to just create with it and it's accessible. And so, even seeing people like Nick join Runway, Timmy join Runway, become community managers after just sharing their passion for the tool. I think that's kind of this magic moment we're in right now, and spaces like this where we can like share that knowledge and just kind of back each other up is, I think, a rare part of the internet. It's kind of the early magic of the internet. So definitely grateful for, yeah, this community for sure.
Dot dot dot. Unless you have a viral post, in which case you'll get a bunch of nasty comments on Twitter. I feel like
Yeah.
there's some weird threshold of over 1.5k likes. It
Well,
gets a
but
little
that's
spicy.
true. But it seems like they come from outside of this community, and that's what
Right.
like I found even when I got attacked for saying commenting on one of your posts, Amar. I can't
Yeah.
remember which one it was, and it was like I had to start blocking people for weeks, right? And it's just, but they weren't from this community, and that it's wild, but they're still there. It's not as bad as it was before, especially like back in December of
Yep.
2022.
Yep.
It's gradually, kind of, I guess, since things did go mainstream pretty much, and people, with AI art especially, people are using it in their jobs, and it's embedded in their system. So I think that it is different here. It's different than tech Twitter and money Twitter and different things like that. So I haven't felt the hostility here either in this community. It usually comes from outside. And even today,
Hmm.
people, they just kind of randomly grab your post and put it up there and, say something crazy. But I think that, yeah, it's just amazing because, yeah, all these companies that didn't even exist, really, these brands with tools that nobody would have really thought about. It's just, you really can make a difference. And depending on, there's no limit to, if you want to learn something, you can learn it. There's no reason not to. If you can skill up in whatever kind of way, if you want to figure out, I'm learning how to edit videos and do things like that. I never thought I'd be doing that. So people, you have an opportunity to, go ahead and take your future in your hands. I appreciate. I guess we can kind of start to wrap up tonight, and I just appreciate everybody coming, and we were able to distill quite a few topics into, the top line topics. We didn't even talk about the Vision Pro last week, but forget that now. we were all I do
No,
want
no,
to
it's
ask
gonna be
you, like,
back. It's gonna
yeah,
be
like
back.
what is that like when you wake up and trying to figure out, what's real or not? That is interesting, and we do need to get into that some more. And Amar, also, I would like to invite you back soon when we have a follow up music and sound space, because we needed the next one to be a little bit more about the legal issues or copyright or just different ways that people can use different sounds. And like when you were talking about the generated the voices for 11 labs, it made me think like, yeah, we definitely should include that in that discussion, right? Because those are all things that could end up later on with some type of I guess, claim against. I don't know how that would work with companies being concerned about whether or not that would be if they're able to use that mainstream or commercially.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, I think there's a lot there. I think there's also a whole thing about Hollywood and voice actors and what that means for the industry there. So I think, yeah, definitely a lot to discuss on that front, and would love to join.
Thank you so much. And everybody, yeah, we had a great music space a couple weeks ago and talking about the different technology that's available. So hopefully maybe in about 4 weeks or so, we can do another one. And I'd appreciate, more people to come and listen to what's available because, but not just music, but sound effects and voices too, because these things are important to what we're doing. We want to make sure we're able to use things without it getting muted on, whatever social media, or just, if you're working for a company, if you're allowed to use it. But I appreciate everybody here, and I see so many great faces here. Thank you, Human. I was in the space earlier today, and that was a wonderful discussion talking about Deforum and some of the other things that you're working on. So thank you for coming. And I see Bunch Youth there from Hive. I appreciate you coming. And Hive 3 is still going on with challenges, and people have been winning money. But a lot of my friends are in this crowd, and I appreciate all of you coming in. And Tech, Sarah, I'm just going through Marco, Uncanny, Harry, Blaine, Muriel, Alex, Tom, Thomas, Alex, Captain Haha, Art. I appreciate. I'm going to stop now before I go on too long. But I just wanted to give everybody a chance to say, what are you working on? And we'll be back next week. As far as I know, I don't have anything planned. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me see here. Amar, I guess we stopped with you. So Rob, you're next on my list. What's going on?
What's up, guys? So, yeah, thanks for coming to this space. For me, I'm working on a new kind of flagship course on prompt engineering for my membership in Lennon Labs. This one's going to be on a technique I'm calling thought prompting, which is where you have the language model go through some reasoning or other pre-processing, precognition of the task it's trying to do. I'm digging into thought prompting in a way that you don't need any special software or tools to do. We're doing it directly in the prompts, either in a mega prompt or in some chains. So it's a pretty advanced course in terms of the technique, but I think a lot of people who are looking to level up their large language model prompting ability, Lennon Labs is already a great place for you to get $1,500 in all of my flagship AI courses to learn prompt engineering. But this next one, I think on its own is going to be worth the price of a 3-month membership. Like it's such a cool course. I can't wait to share it with you guys. Lots of amazing things that we can do when we get the language model to think a little bit harder about what it's up to.
Thank you. I just read that in your newsletter about the thought prompting, and you've taken us through so many different types of ways of thinking about how to speak to AI. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to seeing what you have for us. And Linus, thank you so much for hanging out this late for you.
Yes, thank you.
What's
Thank you
going
for
on?
having me.
How's it going with your
Um,
studio?
yeah, so actually there's a lot of things going on, but like to just I'm not as good of a salesperson as Rob is, but I so where do I start? So I'm building bedtime stories. We're actually kind of like revamping that because it's going really well. We're now past 100,000 stories. We're building audio first. We're doing a lot of things there, new UX, new UI. So like completely rehaul of that. And then I'm building Sensitive Plus together with some great Swift developers. So like Sensitive has been, if you don't know, it's like a mental health app that I've kind of built and maintained on like a free basis, and it's going to continue to be free. But then really kind of leveling up now with everything that I learned the last year and a half with AI, and we're making kind of an AI-driven version of it that will cost a little bit of money. But the idea is to get it to be like at cost, so we're not going to try to make it into this, lucrative business, but more so like a business that will help people. And then I'm building the studio where I'm at right now, actually, in the middle of the night, but because there's no kids here, so I can't wake anyone up. And I'm going on a little bit of a tour. So uh, in a few weeks, I'm going to Amsterdam to talk at DevWorld, a large conference there with about 8,000 attendees. And then a few days later, I'm going directly to Prague and speaking at Movo, which is another great conference. And then I'm going to London to visit DeepMind for a few days and see what they're working on. And then I'm flying over to Vegas and San Francisco. So if anyone is in San Francisco around the GDC, like March 22nd to March 25th, I'd be happy to meet up. And then I'm going to be in Vegas for the Imagine AI Live conference where I'll be speaking as well. So I'm on a bit of a public speaking tour as well as trying to build out bedtimestory.ai and Sensitive Plus. So a lot of things going down here.
Well, you are a busy man and just a world traveler, so that'll be great when you come by the states. Nowhere near me, but be safe. And that sounds very interesting. Um,
Appreciate
I'm
it.
glad to hear all that, and that you got a free night too. So for a
And
free from.
Linus, after all that jet lag, if you do want to hang out in San Francisco, let me know. I'm super down.
I never get jet lag because I'm a pro at moving time zones. So
Perfect.
you cannot get me down. I'll be happy to hang.
Amazing.
Oh, well, Taylor is not feeling well, and I hope that everybody just show her some love. And I'm not going to ask her to speak, so thank you for hanging in here with us this long with a nasty cold. I appreciate it. And Bilal, what's up with you?
So I'm Linus. I'm looking forward to meeting you in the flesh. I'll be in San Francisco for GDC for a NVIDIA collaboration. So I'm really, really looking forward to meeting you all in 3D and MR. We got to figure out how to get a group going. I think there's going to be so many fun parties around GTC, GDC, but I think we should also just go get drinks or grab dinner or something like that. I think it'd be
Super down.
a lot of fun indeed. And yes, on my end, also not as good of a salesperson as Rob, but what I will say is like deeply passionate about AI, 3D, and AR, VR, aka spatial computing. I entertain on YouTube and TikTok. So if you're into entertainment, go check out Billy FX on YouTube and TikTok. If you're more into education, long form videos, sort of dissecting topics in this AI and spatial computing space, go check out Creative Tech Digest. It's both a YouTube channel and a newsletter as well. And yeah, I got some fun announcements coming next week and then in April. I guess I'll slightly tease the one next week. But yeah, I'm joining as the newest AI scout for Andreessen Horowitz. Super excited about that. I signed a couple angel checks this past year. And yeah, I'm looking forward to just supporting founders that need an angel with my background. So stay tuned for that. And if there are any founders listening that want to get a head start, feel free to DM me as well. Great to be here as always. And yeah, Heather, we got to talk about Vision Pro. There's a lot of Vision Pros. There's a lot of Vision Bros. And I think both of
Yeah.
them warrant a lot of discussion.
I do not have one, so yeah, I'd love to hear, some real world examples of it. And I think I'll hold off and wait and see how it goes for you guys. But now I have to follow everyone, and I don't have news as big as that. But I appreciate everybody coming, and I'm still rolling with the YouTube channel, and I'm up to I think 400 subscribers. So everybody listening, please, I'd appreciate it. Go to my link in the bio and check out Visually AI, Heather Cooper on YouTube. It's and I'm also at the same time on TikTok and Instagram. So it's interesting because I'm repurposing this content and trying to learn how to, maximize my time because I'm still working full time also. But it's really cool because it creates a new way to explain the all the little things that I do. I'm always testing out tools and trying to figure out how I can use this like a regular person would so that I can show other people what they can do with it too. So having the video and being able to be out there, especially on something like YouTube, it really helps because I can just show you what I'm doing. And it's a lot to learn, but I appreciate the, curve and everybody giving me a little grace or whatever so that so I get to get up to speed a little bit better. But it's a whole new way of thinking about telling stories and in a way that people will connect with, or if you just want to know how do you use this tool, and I happen to find out a little slick way to do something with Magnifique if you squeeze the window or do something like that, I want to share it. And you so check out and see little prompt skills and things like that I'm trying to share with my audience and maybe get some new ones. So I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't been in this community. I wouldn't even have thought to be creating anything if not for all the different tools and the different people here that I see you doing different things. And it makes me think, wow, I could do that too. That's a great idea to explain how to break down the prompt in a structure or how to use this tool to do this or that. So everybody, please, if I can do it, you can too. And I just appreciate everybody coming, and please have a great weekend.
Bye. Happy
Thank
Friday.
you. Thank you so all for coming, and happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Bye
Happy
bye.
Friday.
Bye bye.